should we start with the session? Yes, otherwise we will be very, very delayed. Yes. Okay, let's give a start to this session. You have to use the headset. Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for joining us in this second day of the Next Bite. And in particular, thank you for joining this session on healthier lives through food. I am Elvira Domingo. I'm the Director of Programs Delivery in EAT Food, and I will be guiding you through the day. It's actually very, very inspiring seeing this big room full of bright minds, great ideas, and it actually is the perfect place for them to collision and to create a spark that can deliver in the future new solutions that can shape the future of the agri-food system. So thanks for that, and thank you for connecting those ideas. Today, well, yesterday, before, we were seeing about the endless possibilities of the microbiome. We also heard about the concept of One Health and the holistic approach to address the agri-food sector challenges. And also, we had the opportunity to know how we can take part in developing solutions for the healthy aging. Today, we will dive more on the consumer side. We will get to know more about the consumer trust in the food system, what is a critical consumer and how we can empower them, and of course, we will get to know more about artificial intelligence being used in the transformation of the agri-food industry. But I don't want to delay this more. I will also want to encourage you to share what's happening here. If things are not said and they are not shared, things are not happening. So please use our hashtag NextBite24 to share on your social media what's going on here today. But yeah, with this, let's jump into our first session. The first session will be on consumer trust in the food system. We have been gathering results of the Consumer Observatory and Trust Tracker that we have been running in EAT Food since, I think, 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong later, close. It is important measuring consumer trust in the food system because it can help us to understand better how our dietary choices are shaped because of this, but also our openness to innovation. And of course, what is keeping us away of having a healthier and more sustainable diet. But we have two real experts on this topic today, and I would like for you to welcome them. We have Klaus Grunert, Professor of Marketing at Aarhus University and Director of the EAT Food Consumer Trust Observatory. Klaus, welcome to the stage, please.
Good morning.
The micro.
Good morning. My name is Klaus Grunert.
No. Close.
What?
I think it's off. It's okay? Okay. Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm the head of the Consumer Observatory of EAT Food. And the aim with the Consumer Observatory is to make the consumer an agent of change in the green transition.
Power to influence the way we produce, manufacture, package and regulate our food. But how much do we really know about what consumers buy and why? Powered by EIT Food and made up of a consortium of experts, the Consumer Observatory is dedicated to uncovering consumer attitudes and opinions on agri-food topics. By producing bespoke consumer insights, collating knowledge and analyzing consumer food trends, the Consumer Observatory is on a mission to put consumers at the heart of all food systems decision-making. Do you want to stay ahead of the curve?
And so one of the things we've been doing in the Consumer Observatory since 2018, as already has been said, is we've been monitoring consumer trust. And why is consumer trust so important for the green transition? For two reasons. One, that consumers, in order to make healthy and sustainable choices, they need to recognize what these healthy and sustainable products are, and they can only do that when they trust the information that they receive from retailers, manufacturers, and from authorities. Secondly, a lot of new products come on the market that are positioned in terms of being more healthy, more sustainable, but consumers need to adopt them. And if they don't adopt them, these products obviously will fail on the market, and that also is a question of trust. So for that reason, trust is very important. And I have some fresh results here from the 2024 Trust Tracker investigation that I will share with you. First of all, we have some data on to which extent consumers are motivated for a healthy living and for a sustainable living. And as we can see here, many people are actually motivated. There are even more people motivated for a sustainable living than for healthy eating. But you can also see a slight tendency here that that motivation actually has been decreasing over the last few years, and we can speculate whether that has something to do with inflation, pressure on budgets, and things like that. However, when we ask people which ways they want to change their diet, then actually sustainability is not on the top. What is on the top then is eating a healthier diet, by all means. And first after that comes more affordable food, and only then more sustainable food. And it has probably something to do with A, that their own health is more important to people than sustainability, but also B, that people find it easier these days to know what healthy living means in terms of a diet than they know what a sustainable diet and sustainable choices in the food area mean. Because if you ask people what they want to change in their diet, this is here in terms of food product categories, and it basically follows nutritional recommendations. People want to eat less salty, fatty, sugary foods, more fiber, more vegetables, more fruit, everything we've been learned for the past 20 years or so. But if you look at what they want to change in terms of food products that are categorized according to the way they have been produced, the picture is much more muddy. And if you look at this one here, to which extent do people want to eat more food with a sustainability label, more vegetables and fruits that are in season, more food with least impact on the environment, the picture is much less clear. And why is that? Well, people find it difficult to change. And one of the reasons, or the major reason they find it difficult to change is related that they realize it's difficult to change their own habits. There's also a budget consideration. They may need to take consideration of their family members. But then number 4 on the list here, there's also the lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge is something that is actionable, and the lack of knowledge is something that is also related to trust. If you look at the degree of trust that people have on actors in the food system, we've been monitoring this, as I said, for a couple of years. The results are pretty stable, and they usually show that on average about half of European consumers have some or even a great degree of trust in actors in the food system, whereas the other half is either doubtful about the trust or decidedly has no trust in the food system. There is a distinction between different actors. Clearly, people don't trust more farmers than regard to the rest. And that is a tendency we can see all over Europe. Don't try to look at this in any detail. This is per country results, but it shows two things. There is difference in the level of trust between European countries. It also shows that the fact that there's more trust in farmers than all the others is true in all the European countries, but it also shows that the difference between trust in farmers and trust in authorities, manufacturers, differs a lot between European countries. And those on the right-hand side here, where the trust is lower, have especially high differences in that respect here. If that is the state of the trust that people have in food chain actors, what are the consequences for the green transition? First of all, it has consequences with regard to the knowledge and the information sources that people are interested in using in order to know something about healthy and sustainable living when it comes to food. About half people think they know where to look for information, but there's another half of people who is doubtful about both their own knowledge and how and where they can get reliable sources of that knowledge. And if you look look at the hit list of sources that people trust in, it's headed, not a surprise, by doctors and health practitioners, followed by scientists and academics. And at the bottom of the list, that's also interesting, we find online influencers that don't seem to have a lot of credibility here. But what we can also see here is that those people that generally have low trust in food chain actors, they have also lower trust in all these sources, even the ones on the top, doctors and health practitioners and scientists. So if people don't trust food chain actors, in general, they are also skeptical with regard to all the information that comes to them, and not only the information that comes from manufacturers, authorities, and so on. Also, people who have less trust are less open to innovations. Those people that are more innovative are more likely to adopt new products, also healthy and sustainable ones. They are the people that those are the people that have more trust in the food chain actor. People who have less trust in food chain actors, they are also more skeptical with regard to adopting new products. And obviously, that is a barrier when it comes to bringing new healthy and sustainable products on the market. And we can see that also. Here's a list of new products that everybody is talking about. And we can see here things like cultured meat, insects as a source of protein, precision fermentation, products made of algae and seaweed. Some of the exciting new products that we are talking about here. People's willingness to try them is, as a point of departure, not overwhelmingly high. But we can see that it is also here a clear differentiation. If people trust actors in the food chain, they're clearly more willing to try these products compared to those people that have low trust in the food chain. So also here becomes clear it's important that we can create trust, that people trust food chain actors. How can we increase consumer trust? We have, as part of the Trust Tracker research, looked a good deal at what are the factors that are decisive for creating trust. And the results of that show there are three main factors that have an influence on people's trust. It's people's belief whether the actor is competent, are manufacturers competent in producing food. Secondly, do people think that they care? They care about the needs of consumers, the needs of society, the needs of future generations. And the third one is, are they open? Are they open with regard to what they're doing, the kind of processes that they use, the technologies that they use, the ingredients of their products, all these kinds of things. And among these three, the research shows that openness is probably the most decisive one, which in a way is nice because it's also the most actionable one, because openness, you can increase openness, obviously. There are ways in which you can do that, and all actors in the food chain can do that. So increasing openness is a major factor with regard to increasing trust in food chain actors. So the conclusions from this one here is that trust is a major factor in the green transition because a lack of trust can prevent people from making changes to their diet towards a more healthy and more sustainable diet. It's related to the use of information, it is related to the adoption of new products, and if you want to increase consumer trust, more openness on the side of food chain actors, and that goes for both farmers, manufacturers, retailers, and authorities, is a good thing. And we have a report on this one here coming up. If you want to be kept in the loop here, this is the QR code. And this was my short rundown of some results from the 2024 Trust Tracker research. And now I would like my second panel member to come to the stage here, Barbara Schandl from Mondelez. And I think you can present yourself with regard to what you are doing at Mondelez.
Yes, can you hear me well? Perfect. Hello everybody, good morning. Thanks for coming to our session. That was super interesting, Klaus. I really enjoyed that. I'm Barbara Schandl. I'm based in Switzerland. I'm with Mondelez. I'm with a team at the moment called Snack Futures Ventures. So it's a strategic CVC. So we are here, at this conference to look out for partnerships, to look out for startups, companies, new technologies, that will help us, our company which is actually quite a big company, to lead the future of snacking. So that's basically my kind of mission at the conference and what we're doing. And yeah, consumer trust is a really important topic in a time, where we're currently in a time of uncertainty and also, in a very complex environment. So yeah, I cannot agree more that this is actually, besides probably also consumer safety, one of the biggest, topics. Yeah.
Yeah, good, thanks. Barbara, you are part of one of the big players in the food field here, part of the manufacturer group in the analysis here. And as you have seen, we have about half of the consumers having trust, but then another half not having a lot of trust. Can you say a little bit about how you and Mondelez work with creating, establishing and securing consumer trust?
Yeah, so yeah, you say it actually, it's a big company, so just to mention some of the brands, like Oreo and Toblerone and Milka and Cadbury, Ritz Cracker in the US, but also here, Fonzes in Italy. So we have also a lot of local brands in every country around the globe, not just, global brands. It is, I would say, one of the most important factors, and I also believe that as a company, we are really exceptional in consumer trust and also in the safety. We heard yesterday, a lot that, smaller companies are great in being agile, being fast, nimble, moving ahead super fast. But I think, what we really ensure and, also how we do it is, and I think that's the number one thing, whenever you think about, the consumer and, my background is in consumer insight. I has been in consumer insight for my entire career. It is really important, and you build consumer trust by really ensuring, you have a great product quality. I know it sounds very obvious, but it's not just having one time a great product quality, but also maintaining this product quality over a long period of time. A brand like Milka is over 100 years old, so you can imagine, also over the course of the years, with many changes, ensuring that is super important. So I would say, as a company, we really put a lot of emphasis on product quality, with big R&D teams. I'm in consumer science, but I have also a lot of colleagues. I'm in consumer insights, but I have a lot of colleagues in consumer science as well. So also collaborating between the departments, I think, is super important. A second part, how we build consumer trust is also in, being me here, also looking out obviously for collaboration, but also we have a lot of innovation going on in the Mondelez space business. So innovation is also building consumer trust, because as you can imagine, as a big company, we are not building any more business. We are not building any more brand. That's sort of done. I mean, most brands are very, very old. We have a big business, so for us, it's really ensuring, over time that we keep, that we really ensure the future of snacking, so that we keep, a constant, I would say, new news also for our consumer, but also satisfying those consumer needs. So I would say that's the second part. And then the third part, is something, for a brand company is kind of also obvious, but it's all around, brand storytelling. So it's not brand building, so it's more brand storytelling, but also leveraging, social media, but also, not doing anything, what we are not, right? So basically being really also authentic, and being also true to ourselves as a big company is also super important. And I think these are very basic ingredients, but if you think also of yourself, how you build trust with, people you meet the first time, it's sometimes not that different, right? So, if you have a business, if you have a brand, think about, how you want to appear, think about, what do you want to stand for a long time in order to gain that trust, from your end consumer. I think that's very important. And I think I think I know, that our company is doing here super well in all those levers, also besides, ensuring safety. There was, I can give you also a really great example from COVID, a couple of years ago, where it's really interesting because we always look very much at the small companies, right, that they are fast, they're agile, how can we be like them? But there was an example during COVID where our company has proven, that we can really, supply, consumer need to, we produced 7 days a week, 24 hours. And we turned this around in a couple of weeks' time, So we are really good at mass. We are really good at, when there is something out in the market happening, something big, we can go out and do it, And that was, I would say, really amazing, because then also what we noticed during this time is, and that goes back to trust, consumers really choose brands during a time of uncertainty, what they know, where you feel safe, where you can go back to. Maybe you had it in your childhood, maybe it's something you remember, from days, I don't know, you were sitting together with your grandma, yeah? So, and I think that is also something, creating stories, engaging with consumers, building memories is also important, to have this trust. It's actually quite human, when you think about trust is a very human thing, yeah?
Yeah, and you are, of course, a relatively old company. You have brands with a long history. Yeah. If you have brands with a long history, it's also possible, if you do it right, obviously, that you build trust that people then associate with the brand, right? But I know that you also work a lot with startups and new companies that don't have that history. No? In the beginning, they need to build consumer trust from the bottom. Do you have any sort of advice or any considerations for these small companies?
I would say it goes back to also what I do. I think it's really around asking yourself, what consumer need or problem you're solving, So basically answering that with answering what a person really wants, and you're listening to their needs, right? And you are addressing that, you automatically build trust, because they would say, this actually, I didn't even know that this maybe brand or product exists. This is exactly what I was looking for, yeah? How did they get to know me, How did they actually know that I need that? I'm sure that's all happened to you at a certain stage with not only food, but maybe with other types of things, where you say, oh my God, I was waiting for this forever, and now it's here. So I think that is how you build trust. So I would always go back and say, try to find the consumer need or problem, or even, maybe it's not always a need or a problem, but also maybe it's something, you give people joy, because if you're in the snacking industry, it's not always a problem, right? Because there are a million of cookies out there. There's actually a lot of chocolate out there. It's not that people need more, but it's also maybe, what else can you do? Is there something you can bring back to people they are maybe missing? So that is something I would say, because also, it creates also for your stakeholders and your investors. You think about also, when you are in contact with investors as well, I think it creates also more credibility. So that's actually one thing I would recommend. Maybe another one is what I said before is, be authentic. When you do something, and when you also are on a mission, you can be mission-based, but again, don't forget the consumer. Be authentic, that's also how you build trust out there. So be honest about what's possible with, what you are working on and maybe what's not yet possible. So I think that's also something, being really authentic. Again, that's not so different, when you build trust with a person, yeah. And then I would say also, what you just did, Klaus, I think was super, super nice is, don't forget, maybe insights or facts, also, bring in some kind of, well-grounded, knowledge, yeah? So here you can have the trust tracker, which basically we can download, you can use, we can also use it, when you have a small company, when you meet people, yeah? Because also when you can kind of, fact-base certain things, it also gives you much more trust, with the audience as well, Because people believe in insights, facts, in the world we operate, but of course also your experience, yeah. So I think this is actually a kind of a mixture I would recommend, for smaller companies, tap into resources, tap into your network, to get, those facts or insights. It's not always a big study. It's not always expensive market research. Yeah? Now with also technology, you can do a lot. Yeah, and just actually, be honest about, if you want to change something in this world, helping actually consumers to be better, right? Also to live a healthier life, yeah? that's wonderful. I think we're all on this mission. It goes all in the right direction. People are making small changes. Yeah. And I think, if you can contribute to that with your company, you just started or you're just in, I think that's great, and yeah, that's what I would do. So
Yeah. And you said several times, be authentic.
yeah,
And I, in the end, said, be open.
yeah.
Is that related, or what's your take on this term openness as a component of trust?
Openness in terms of
Being open about what you're doing, being transparent.
yeah, absolutely
Not
transparent.
hiding anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's also comes for me, authenticity, openness, give also clarity, yeah.
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 Okay. Are there any questions, remarks from the audience, please?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the interesting insights. Talking about openness and transparency, that was exactly the theme of my question. So I work for the non-profit Open Food Facts, and we are building a database of food products to help consumers make better decisions and compare products online. Would Mondelez be happy to contribute to our database? Are you transparent
Yeah.
enough to?
I think I think consumers who choose us, they know what they get or not. Like absolutely, we are playing mostly in indulgence, in something what really people enjoy, which is also a consumer need. So yeah.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you very
yeah.
much.
Hi, thanks very much for the presentation about the Trust Tracker. It's really interesting. I'm from Reading University. I wonder if you can, Klaus, if you could tell us anything about any age differentials in your data at all. I'm particularly interested if younger people are influenced by different things. Thank you.
We are looking at the effect of demographics, and it will be in one of the reports that are coming out here in a few weeks. I don't remember the details, but what I remember from the past years is that the influence of demographics on trust were actually surprisingly small.
Hi, many thanks for sharing the insights. I found it really, really great. So I definitely download the report and read in carefully into the details. I guess my question is, we're talking about the openness. I'm sure you agree. There has been a bit of like broken of trust for the food processing in terms of like ultra processed food. So I think consumers increasingly feel that there's a bit of like how can we regain that trust? I think what I'm quite interested in learning is how do you plan to communicate to the consumers in terms of the processings, and then so I'm not sure it makes sense. Yeah.
You first.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's how protein started, right? In a way, when you think about ultra processed, like many years ago. So, but maybe without people really knowing about it. Again, I think we don't need to, in our case, just talking in a wider sense of the company, Mondelez, we don't need to communicate anything back because, again, we are in the full indulgent area. Like our products are highly, whatever, sweet. Sweet. We have chocolate, right? We have biscuits. We have cookies. We have all of that, So consumers, in most cases, know, what they're getting into. Yeah. So they have obviously but they have also a choice. Yeah. So, but I agree with you. I believe it's probably not. I think that is past now to me, right? What happened? I think it's now more going from ultra processed, what we see, into clean. And it's really clean. It's the bigger theme around. Also, I mentioned this yesterday around clean eating. Yeah. And that's going to be super important in the future. So it's, short ingredient lines, but also, for companies, big companies, to look at the ingredient line and say, what can we make better, right? Then it's also the better for you area as well, yeah, because consumers, want to be better people, right? They want to do something for the planet. They want to eat better. They want, actually, it's exactly what Klaus presented, yeah. So I believe it's more, from ultra processed, but going more into that now. Okay, I know I'm interested in what I'm getting. I want to know, yeah. So that's I think what is going. So it's this trend shift also, yeah.
I think there are, with regard to the ultra-processed food debate, some of them are not very healthy, but there are two issues in there. One is the nutrients in there, and that is a known debate, right? But the other thing is how consumers view processing, because consumers have relatively little knowledge about food processing. It has become much more complex than in the old days. There are a lot of technologies being employed that people have limited understanding of. And if you don't understand something and you think it's potentially dangerous, people get scared. A lot of research showing that. So I think it's important to create a better understanding of food processing and to demystify the things that we are doing to the food ingredients in order to process them into foods. We are already a bit over time, but we also started late. So is there a last question? Because there is a last question.
First of all, delightful presentation, Klaus and Barbara. Second time for you. Yeah, just one thing. Like, having studied consumer insights myself, I have been always asked this question that, for example, you're building a product, but the needs and the wants of consumers vary a lot. So how do you cater to so much different needs and via a single product somehow? So I can ask about like wanderlust, like when we are bringing up, for example, a certain product, what aspects do you consider most important? Because again, one person might need a particular rice-based protein, another one might need a hemp-based protein. So just as an example, I'm just saying. So what parameters you consider most important? In order to
Okay, that sounds very corporate now. But the most parameter what's is important
Yeah,
is that we
exactly.
can scale it. That it's actually there's actually a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
They have the same type of need, and usually
Right.
that's the case. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people. If you would not believe it, even also when you watch consumers or consumer groups, and you think, oh, there are only 10 people, but there are thousands of people out there that have
Yeah.
a similar need. So for us, I think I can answer. It needs to be scalable. There needs to be enough
Right.
volume. Yeah. But again, when you're a smaller company, you might be super fine when you're on a mission to solve something, smaller, and that's fine as well. It doesn't need to be always big. Yeah. But I think it's important to listen. There is product needs, right? Then there is, but it's more, on us.
Yeah.
But we're really trying. What we're trying to do is in some form of way, solving something for the consumer on a packaging front. It is easier to open. I mean, I'm always shocked. How many product brands are out there. You cannot open the packaging, and I'm like, man, this is the first touch. When a person consumes a product. Yeah. So it's really these kind of things, to understand and build on that. But again, it can also be, in our case, because the brands are so big and established, it can also be more emotional also, yeah? It's joy. Oreo is all about, bringing, after COVID, people wanted joy. They didn't want to stay at home anymore. They wanted to go out. They wanted to travel. They want to be joyful, yeah? So there was a need of bringing back joy to people's life, yeah? Think about it. You can solve that in so many ways. Yeah?
And of course, there's room for small companies here doing niche products to a smaller audience. Yeah. Okay, I think we need to close. Thanks a lot for being here. Do you want to have the last word?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much, Klaus and Barbara, for this fantastic session. Just a few takeaways. Work with insights and data. Download our consumer trust reports.
Yeah.
Work on your product quality, collaboration, innovation to satisfy your consumer needs. Work on your storytelling, be authentic and be transparent. Thank you. Thank you for this fantastic session. It's been great and with a lot of insights. Thanks. And see you here back at 11:30 for the next session. Hello, everyone. Ready with your headset again? I'm glad this is working, actually. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for not going away after the lunchtime and being here with us. We are getting closer to the end of the Next Byte 2024, but we still have lots of knowledge and insights to share with you. So please hold on and stay with us for a little more time. I will always encourage you to share what's happening here using the social media and the hashtag NextByte24. Okay, it's there and you can use it in every social media. And I also wanted to ask you, what are we here for? Don't worry, you don't need to answer. But we are cultivating change here. We are the people around this place involved and related somehow, one way or another, in developing groundbreaking innovations, in sharing ideas, in transforming the agri-food system to be healthier and more sustainable. And today we are really lucky and honored to have a panel that covers the whole value chain from farmers to food industry, but also to consumers. And they will give us a better knowledge on how different technologies, artificial intelligence is being used to transform the agri-food system, the industry, the farming side as well. So I can't wait to hear more from them. And I will start introducing our moderator, Lara Rodriguez, Senior Program Manager in EIT Food. Welcome her with a big applause. And she will be introducing the next speakers. Thank you, Lara. Here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. What about now? Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So thank you, Elvira, also for introducing us. So good afternoon, everyone. We have a very exciting panel ahead. Actually, the roundtable, it will be around the topics of sustainability and how the emerging technologies and advanced technologies on the collaboration efforts of the sector are driving economical resilience, sustainability, environmental impact, and also enhancing the food security. So for that, we have a fantastic expert panel that we are very fortunate to have today, and I will be introducing them in a minute. So please welcome to the stage to Sibylle Berth. Sibylle is the European Director for Sustainability at Kerry Group. So welcome, Sibylle. We also have Eduardo Genun. So Eduardo is the head of partnership and alliances at Tastewise. Big applause. Thank you. And also, finally, we also have Jean-Marc Levy, co-founder of Carbon Farmers today. Thank you to all of you for staying here. So very briefly, I will share with you thank you. I will share with you how the roundtable will go. So I will be guiding you through 3 rounds of questions. That will be directed to the speakers, and then we will open after this moment. We will be open up the micro on the floor to the audience, so you can also hold down the questions that you might have at the moment, and then we will have the chance to have a debate at the end and to answer some questions. Okay? Okay, brilliant. So I think we can to kick off. One of the big big issues that we wanted to talk today is about emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and blockchain. So first of all, Sibylle, given the Kerry net zero ambitions, how do you see the role of the emerging technologies such as blockchain or artificial intelligence affecting or more or less transforming the supply chain at Kerry? And also, how do you integrate those within your operations?
Well, thank you very much, Lara. And I think I'll just introduce Kerry a little bit for those of you who aren't familiar with what we do. So we are a health and nutrition company. We're working in a B2B space. And from a scale perspective, we have around 18,000 products, and we probably have roughly around 10,000 suppliers operating in 150 countries. So you can probably tell that when we look at AI and emerging technologies, it's incredibly important and it's going to hopefully optimize our whole supply chain. So I might take the question and answer it in two different parts. One about how we're integrating it into our own operations and what it's doing for ourselves, and then how do we use machine learning and some new technologies with our customers, because it's two probably different challenges and we're addressing them slightly differently. So when we look at our own operations, the use of AI in particular is incredibly important when it comes to optimization, when it comes to demand planning, because we have, as you mentioned, we have goals around net zero and reducing food waste. And one of the biggest things that we're able to use technology and use information for is about forecasting. And it sounds so basic and maybe unglamorous, but for us it's incredibly important when it comes to that food waste goal, because if we're producing food that isn't needed or a customer isn't going to take from us, it's going to go to waste. So as soon as we can optimize our own internal supply chains and our own operations, that is going to make a massive impact on our net zero goal. And then with that, the piece of taking in machine learning and optimizing our own operations, it's about looking at downtimes of machines, it's about energy efficiency. So again, these are very maybe unsexy topics, but for us, that's really how we're going to actually get to that net zero target, because process efficiency is huge. So when we look at our own operations, we're looking at every way we can save energy, which enables us to build on that net zero journey. So that's kind of our internal operations. When we then look at how we're working with suppliers, the piece around blockchain transparency back to farm level is incredibly important. I mentioned we have around 10,000 suppliers, so we do not have access directly to our farmers across the globe. So we rely very heavily on third-party data. So in order for us to optimize transparency and pass that transparency throughout the supply chain to customers is incredibly important. So the use of blockchain across technologies, across our supply chains, is really taking it to that transparency to the next level for us. And it's not necessarily something new, but I think one of the pieces that we are relying very heavily on at the moment is integrating machine learning into how we interact with customers. An example of this is one of our big portfolios of products is in the food preservation and protection space. And what we're essentially able to do is we're building tools to model predictive analytical skill sets to be able to forecast food waste and the preservation capabilities of our technology. So again, it's not new technology or science, but it's about bringing the machine learning into it. And it's a mold inhibitor calculator. Again, not a super glamorous topic, but we're able to predict how our technology or how our product is able to impact positively at a customer's end product. So, and then be able to forecast that out for 5 days, 10 days, what does shelf life increase look like? So I suppose it's building on different inputs of data. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of an insight into what we're doing in our own operations. It's around process efficiency. What we're doing at supply chain, it's really about bringing that transparency across the supply chain. And then how we're adding value to our customers is able to show them what do our products enable them to do. So that's a brief summary.
Okay, no, that's fantastic, Sibyl. I think you have covered actually some of the topics that we will be discussing further, such as food waste, transparency and data, also for consumer trends. So thank you for that. Then I think we're talking slightly on that sense. Eduardo, you are also, we are seeing that also artificial intelligence is changing the way that consumer trends are analyzed. So at Tastewise, how do you see how your models, your data models, can predict or account for the regional differences on consumer preferences, especially on sustainability? And also, how do you apply that to a global production? Because we are now, in a global market. So how is these two worlds possible?
Thank you, Lara. So first of all, let me give you a quick introduction as to what is Tastewise. Thank you. So Tastewise is an AI-powered platform that basically helps us observe in real time millions and millions of people to understand ultimately what consumer behavior looks like, what are the main drivers behind consumer behavior, as well as what are some of the trends in ingredients and in flavors that will ultimately help our customers, which are all types of players within the F&B industry develop products in the most efficient way, both in terms of trends and ingredients as well as consumer needs. We also help them not only in these insight or the speed to insight by providing them this real-time information, but also we help them with the marketing execution and concept development of products that will be relevant to the target audience that they are trying to reach. So having said that, to answer your question, Lara, so we look at gigantic sets of data that are highly granular, but also are located or allow us to do that geolocation split. In so doing, we're not only looking at the geographic definition or geographic sourcing of that data, but we also have the capacity to understand and go beyond the geographical definition into the audiences. And ultimately, that helps us understand the cultural nuances per market and understand what may be some of the needs and drivers in terms of sustainability per country. So we might find in one country it may be water reduction, and in another country will be zero food waste. That ultimately is what helps us and helps our customers develop products in the most efficient way possible without having to go through the inefficiencies that have been in place for the last couple of decades. So one of the main goals of Tastewise is to reduce or rather increase the success rate of product launches. One of the things that we've observed is that about 80% of products that are launched at the retail level ultimately are delisted within 12 months. So that has a huge impact on food waste at a global scale. One of the reasons why they utilize and they leverage all of our data is to ultimately connect those trends in sustainability that are so important to consumers with the right trends in terms of flavors and ingredients to develop products at the most efficient level and having therefore a huge and direct impact on food waste at the global level.
Okay, so that's very interesting how to do connect regional and global food production actually. Very interesting. Also, Jean-Marc, your work really you work also on data integration and how this support the decision making. So if you can maybe explain us slightly on carbon farming and carbon farmers and how your platform does support to this real-time decision making for small scale farmers and also agri-food companies while they work towards their sustainability goals.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Lara, for your question. Actually, at Carbon Farmer, we do build and we help food companies to create low carbon value chains, and this is done through data. Not only because we also go on farms with our team of agronomists that is really on a day-to-day connection with farmers, helping them to set up action plans for the future, for the transition plans. On the data, actually our mission is really to align all the parties throughout the supply chain to share the cost and to evaluate the cost of this transition, because this is really the key pain points today to solve if we want to encourage and to commit farmers into their transition to sustainability and not only low carbon but also biodiversity or water usage, etc. You have to align on several data. First is the kind of reduction you are aiming. So, and this on our side can only be done farm by farm. So each farmer has to decide. He's a businessman. He's an entrepreneur. So he will, and he's the only one to decide which practice he's able or confident to set up. Once these practices are set up, then comes the cost of the transition. And as a third party, we share this cost of transition farm by farm, but also consolidating on a batch of farmers, of course, to help the whole supply chain to align on the cost that should be paid to farmers to transition. And as a third party, we have no interest on rising or lowering the price of commodities, milk or sugar or sugar beet or wheat. We are calculating this cost thanks to some software that we have developed since our inceptions, and this gives stakeholders the ability to negotiate the price. And then a third challenge here is to share that cost between the different, let's say, the different commodities that the farmer is selling. A farmer, usually a dairy farming, typically has also cash crops, so he can sell a potato, beetroot, wheat, etc. And then comes the question how to share that cost of transition between all the stakeholders. So here again, you have to be very objective, and to align all the parties. For example, on sharing the cost of transition on cash crops, we use a very simple rule: is the surface, so the number of acres or hectares that are being cultivated on one specific commodity. So if wheat represents 30% of a field crop farmer, then the transition cost should be take the part of the wheat buyers, so the wheat supply chains, so the mills, etc., should pay 30% of that transition. So that's how we use the data to provide confidence and alignment. Again, for one reason, to cover the cost of transition. I mean, cover is the minimum we can do. Of course, we should also pay the risk of transitioning for farmers, but that's another question. At least reaching that first goal of covering the cost would be already a huge achievement.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Marc. I think you already answered actually all the questions I have for you, but we will deepen slightly more on some of the topics. So, Sibyl, also for Kerry Group, as I know that you are expanding your focus on regenerative agriculture. So, how do you manage to scale up these practices, these sustainable practices at global scale, at the same time that particularly bearing in mind the regional differences on the weather, environmental circumstances, and also social economical conditions of the different regions? How is this possible?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and I think it follows on quite nicely from what Jean-Marc was speaking to there. I should have started with saying that Kerry started as an organisation 50 years ago as a dairy co-op. So our history and heritage is very much in dairy. So we've expanded. We've now 10,000 different raw materials, but dairy is the core in terms of what we've started as heritage, but also our future. And we all know with dairy, there's a very high carbon embedded into dairy. So when we looked at Regen Ag and looked at a prioritisation piece, it was really focused where we can have the biggest impact first. So we piloted a project 4 years ago in Ireland, which is called Evolve, and it essentially is a regenerative agriculture project. And there's a couple of key principles around what we needed to set out, what we were trying to achieve. But one of the key objectives was, once we prove this pilot, how do we replicate this across other dairy supply chains outside of Ireland, but then also across other raw materials? And so I think, to some of Jean-Marc's points, the first piece was the need for incentivization, because if we're looking for our farmers to transition, we need to be able to give them that risk avoidance and kind of pay accordingly. So very important that any change that was implemented at farm, there was a cost associated that Kerry covered. And the next piece on that was to make sure that it wasn't Kerry imposing onto our farm suppliers. It was very much a two-way process. So I think that has really enabled us to take learnings back from what's working at farm level and to be able to pivot. So year one, we had a very clear agenda. Year two, it had completely changed because it wasn't working. There was changes that needed to be made. And I think in order to adapt and understand what those changes were, there was 3 key elements that we were looking at. And it gets into this, again, coming back to the data and the importance of data. Because if you implement a change at a farm, you're not going to see a result year 1, year 2. It might be 5, 6 years later. So we looked at soil health, animal health, and water quality. And they were really the 3 metrics. And then realised fairly quickly that biodiversity needed to be on farm as a measurement tool as well. So what we look to do then is when we take the learnings, we consult with the farmers to see what's working, to see what changes are happening on farm, how we're taking that data. And then we're building predictive models using a range of different technology and third-party suppliers, because we can't do it all ourselves. We don't have the bandwidth and we don't have access to our farmers outside of the Irish context. So taking all of that into consideration is really how we're looking to scale and to build it across region, because regardless of what climate you're in or what geographic location, the farmer is at the centre, so that's number one. The need for incentivisation is going to be number two, and then the need for good quality data is number three. So even though there's going to be loads of variables, those three consistent factors are what we've based our principles on. And so we now are looking at supply chains from a dairy perspective, broader Europe. So we're not doing every continent at the same time. We're looking at different pilot projects. So I suppose, in answer to your question, it's about taking the learnings but applying them on a phased basis, because we can't do it all at one time, and then looking at different commodities now, which is tier 2, tier 3 for us in terms of where we can have the biggest impact.
Thank you. Very interesting, actually, model. I see that actually you are combining emerging technologies or really advanced technologies with also collaboration and more manual, let's say, if you wish, relation or more hand-to-hand relation with farmers and local little endeavors. So I think it's very linked as well. Do you want to say? Yeah.
Just wanted to add regarding the quality of data. Always be aware that farm data is populated through humans, and the humans that are not specialized in data science, that do not have a PhD, either the advisor or the farmer. Usually it's a mess. It's a real core to enter the data in any platform. So so at Carbon Farmer we are really aware of that, and as payments and cost sharing, etc., is based on this data, we have set a whole procedure of automatic consistency check of data. And we see many errors, but usually, again, these are not made by specialists, by data specialists. So you have to think that a farmer do that at 8 o'clock after the milking, the second milking of the day, or the advisor do that during a coffee in his car. So really, there's nobody to criticize for the low quality of farm data. But now people or companies like Kerry or like us need to adapt and to set up really processes in order to correct the information. That is really key, and that's not artificial intelligence. It could be tomorrow, but at least having some threshold for each kind of data already provides a lot of value.
If you stay for a second, I think I will continue, because this is very related with where we are talking about aligning all the stakeholders that we have on our industry, on our supply chain, towards the same goal. How do you see, which challenges do you find? I think you already talked slightly about it, but which challenges do you see in aligning all these diverse stakeholders towards the same goal, and also how they remain committed for a long-term sustainability goals? I think incentivizing is one of the probably topics, but it's interesting to know how you connect.
If we look back a few years ago, many food companies were paying premiums for practices. For just give you an example, McCain was paying €1 per ton of potato for cover crops. So they had calculated how much does it cost to implement cover crops. So I will pay €5 per ton of potato regarding an average yield of XYZ. Now this has changed. This is a shift to a result-based incentive. So we're not talking about levels or practices to implement. They will be paid by the results they are achieving in terms of water consumption, in terms of carbon, of course, carbon footprint, and emission factor, to be more precise. So the carbon intensity of agricultural commodity. And this shift has a few consequences and provides some challenges today. because then you have to adopt a farm by farm approach, not anymore. And again, what I mentioned. So the cost sharing procedure, the cost sharing allocation, in order for each stakeholder to carry a part of the cost.
Okay.
If I
It's
answered your
doable.
question.
I see that it's complex, but it's doable.
It's
I imagine.
doable with a lot of data, and verified data.
Yeah.
It's doable. Yeah, we have no choice anyway.
Exactly. Okay. So maybe Eduardo, changing slightly the topic, but coming back to the food waste, which is a major global problem actually. We've seen that Kerry's, for example, they have their own activities in terms of minimizing the food waste on the supply chains. How is TasteWise also working with artificial intelligence on predicting and supporting real-time decision-making for agri-food industries also to minimize the food waste?
So at TasteWise, we work with players with the size of Kerry, with very large industry players, as well with players with the size of Carbone, which hopefully one day we'll see you at the size of Kerry. And one thing that we see is that depending on which customer of ours we're working with, they're trying to implement the sustainability initiatives in one way or another. So, well, one thing that we see and how we try to help the big guys, the big companies, is we know that they're already implementing, for instance, they have some corporate governance responsibility and they try to tackle a wide array of sustainability issues, but they do face some challenges simply because of the large scale of their operations, right? As Shaibil clearly mentioned in the case of Kerry. Having said that, we help them by trying to put forward some of the most relevant messages that the consumers are talking about so that they can adapt their strategies in such a way that ultimately has a direct impact on food waste for them and for the customers, which are the ones that really care about this, and so should we. And then in terms of the smaller players or the startup companies with whom we work today, we see that they tend to be more agile as well as more focused in one single topic as opposed to try to cover everything within the macro level sustainability initiatives. That also gives them an edge by trying to untap markets that, simply because they're focusing more on it, they can be more thorough and ultimately reach those audiences. But they also have their own set of challenges, right? So they have less bandwidth to cover more programs or more initiatives, as well as they have to navigate these very complex scenarios, regulatory scenarios. So we also help them by trying to, once again, put forward, they tend to have a much more clear target audience to whom they try to target, and ultimately we also help them with that by, instead of adapting, rather like they do the big guys, we try to help them optimize their strategy to the target audience. So we try to collaborate with all types of players in this food waste and sustainability initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eduardo. Very interesting. Also, in that line that you collaborate with startups or smaller companies on the size like carbon farmers and also bigger players on the industry. What differences do you observe on regards of sustainability innovation between those players? Do you see more like on the traditional players or bigger players and the startups that are disrupting the market? Do you see like with differences?
I think, yeah, I think that the main difference is that the large players, they have to implement those changes in a gradual and in incremental phases, like the Kerry Group, which doesn't mean that they're not moving forward. It just means that they have such large operations that they're not as nimble, but they have a much higher reach. So ultimately, we're very pleased and we're very proud to work with these types of players because they're the ones ultimately moving the needle to the larger part of the industries. With smaller players, again, they tend to focus in one specific initiatives, and they become much more thorough, and they can ultimately even become market leaders and a voice of that has a huge following within those initiatives, because they have the capacity to only focus on one at any given point, and they also become more agile, and they can become as well closer to their target audience. Having said that, the one thing that we do see in common is that these types of companies, be it small or larger, they're not obviating the fact that AI has become an absolute must in their operations, because it grants them the capacity to understand at a much larger scale anywhere from consumer behaviors, the sustainability concerns from the target audiences, and they can connect that to the product development or the products that they may be selling. Not having that available to them actually becomes a disadvantage. So we've seen it across the board with all types of sizes and players, and they all are succeeding or gaining a competitive edge over the industry by making use of these types of resources.
Thank you. So, as a very final question to you, which message would you convey maybe to these to agri-food companies that are still hesitant to implement AI or blockchain within their operations? Or would you encourage them to have a tech forward approach?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, I am biased. I work for an AI company, but if you look at it objectively, it's just as I mentioned. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage, a competitive disadvantage, by not making use of these tools, simply because they are available to everybody within the industry, and they help in the decision-making process to ultimately optimize your sales channel, your supply chain, your procurement. So at every single step of the supply chain and every single step of the sourcing and the sales, so again, from beginning to end, it just helps you make better decisions. So I think it's no longer optional, and yeah, we can see it in just to my left and to my right. You guys can see that companies across the board are starting to utilize this. So I highly encourage you to continue and to engage with these types of technologies.
Thank you, Eduardo. I think to finish off, I will do a couple of brief questions also to Sabil regarding the Region Act and your relation with small farmers. Sorry, how do you measure the long-term effect or the long-term ambition that you have on your sustainability efforts, especially on farm level, but also beyond within your company? Because I guess this is a long-term goal for Kerry and for all of us, but yeah, what is your KPI? So how you measure that?
So I think it's a great question because, as I mentioned, if you implement change at farm, you're not going to see it year 1, year 2. And it's maybe slightly goes against traditional investment in a corporate organisation, because return on investment tends to be on a 3-year payback period. When you're talking about Regen Ag, we might see it in 10 years' time. So it's actually creating a change of mindset internally, and I think that is really what Regen Ag is doing at a corporate level. But I suppose if I take it to a corporate level, we have, on a net zero journey, we have set our own Scope 3 carbon target. So we're looking at a 30% reduction for Scope 3. And what that means is we then have to be able to look at our suppliers and see how are we decarbonising at farm level, essentially. And in order for us to get there and to actually measure and monitor what's happening at farm level, Jean-Marc is completely correct in saying that the data coming off farm is not always 100% accurate. We know that human error can be a huge part of that data inaccuracies. We also know that between countries there's huge level of variance in terms of the accuracy of data and emission factors. So there is not one standard go-to gold star solution. So what we are doing, and I think it plays in very nicely to what we just heard from Eduardo, is the role of startup and new innovation technology at farm level. So last year, as part of the pilot that I mentioned, the Evolve program, we partnered with 3 startups, and actually one is here today. So it's a soil monitoring startup, and it's essentially putting sensors into the ground to test the nitrates in soil. So again, it might sound quite primitive. However, it's not, because what it's doing is it's sending us and the farmer real-time data around nitrogen in soil, whether or not there's a need for more fertilizer, not to put fertilizer on, And what we're doing is, the trial has only been running for the last couple of months, but what we're going to have in 12 months' time is we're going to have very accurate data around what's happening at farm. Has the soil health improved? Is it to do with reducing fertilizer? Have we looked at the seasons, mapping it against weather patterns? So what we're doing is we're building a data point that we will then be able to make decisions based off. And at the same point, again, to Jean-Marc's point, we're not paying for incentive for change in behaviour, we're paying for impact. So when we incentivise impact, it's around decarbonising the actual product that's coming off these dairy farms. So it's no longer a case of we're paying because someone is planting trees. We're paying when we can monitor and have an impact KPI assessed against it. And I think that's really the step change, because we're not going to be able to see biodiversity improvement in a year, but we will be able to in 5 years if we have consistent data points measuring. And we rely very heavily on third parties for that, because we physically cannot get out to every farm. So we're using data in terms of aerial mapping, we're using satellite, we're using a multitude of different technologies and different startups to help us come up with a solution, because Kerry are not going to solve this challenge on our own. We need all of the different members of the supply chain, whether it's other corporates, whether it's other entities, state entities, and then it's the startup innovation coming. So how we're actually looking at the data is there's no one solution. It's multifaceted. And I think the last piece of that puzzle is, how does that data fit into our systems? Because we need to make sure all the data points talk to each other. So that's the next challenge. But I think from a farm level data, we're very clear on what our objective is. As a corporate, we've a target reduction from carbon, but then at farm level, it's about decarbonising the product coming off the farm. So it's that low carbon dairy essentially is what we're striving for, and we're paying the premium based off of the decarbonisation.
Okay. Thank you very, very
Sorry
insightful.
if that was a little bit technical.
No, but it was very insightful. I as a main takeaway, I can see a very common approach on the three of you, talking about the collaboration and how it's really not possible to talk about sustainability, or it's not negotiable collaboration within the sustainability. You need big companies working with farmers, with startups, with AI, softwares, etc. So this is really a message that probably we should convey even farther in the future. Very final note on Jean-Marc as well. You were talking about the cost of regenerative agriculture, on the cost of for farmers on scaling or doing the transition to sustainable farming, and how you split or equally distribute those costs along the supply chain. Which would you say is your most, or the financing or partnership model that it has been proven more effective for supporting the shift for these farmers?
I don't know if I understand, if I got your whole question, but I will reinterpret it. So how to convince the supply chain to cover this cost and take part. What we are really observing now is that some customers, I will take an example not on milk, but on sugar or alcohol, sugar beet products. Some line of business, such as cosmetics or pharmaceuticals, will be more willing to pay a premium for low carbon, for extra low carbon alcohol or sugar. Whereas players like Coca-Cola, who are buying tons of sugar, will be longer to convince on that investment. So you really have to, and cooperative and food company, cooperative or traders have to combine with this very different landscape on the business. And our solution helps to separate and to create batches of production with mass balance approach. So you're not talking about segregated sugar or milk. We are having a mass balance approach, but we are securing the sale of very low carbon commodities to some of the customers that will be ahead of others. I'm talking about cosmetics or pharmaceuticals on sugar, but you can also, on the dairy ingredients, have some also pharmaceutical companies or supplements companies also interested in dairy ingredients, high-value dairy ingredients, and carbon footprint of these ingredients. So you can, let's say, start the ball rolling regarding decarbonation by starting with those players that will be ahead and will be, yeah, let's say, more open and ready to start paying premiums.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I don't know if I got you.
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
your
no,
question.
yeah, I think so. But of course, we need to probably deep more, even more on the conversation. But unfortunately, I think at this moment we don't have more time for this conversation. We have tackled a big range of topics within the sustainability and our artificial intelligence. So thank you very much. I think it's a good moment to open up the floor to the audience as well, because you have a very comprehensive information on sustainability, and I'm sure that we have the audience looking forward to make some questions to our speakers. So we still have 10 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you for the wonderful approach of the insights of real case studies. But I do have a question concerning the days of implementation of artificial intelligence. How many days have you wasted explaining to the farmers? Do you have any real case scenario? And how do farmers can adopt that for all three of you? So
I can talk first a little bit about my experience around adoption at farm level, and it's not specific to AI, it's more new incentives. We're very fortunate through this pilot. We have farm discussion groups. So there is a pre-existing structure that we slot into as a cooperative. And what that enables us to do is when there's a new concept comes on for discussion, it is taken away by the farm discussion groups and it's disseminated and it's coming from farmers to farmers. So when it comes to something like a new technology, the kind of core group of farmers, so it's the kind of tier one farmers, they're the early adopters, they are brought into the discussion very early, and their feedback is then really taken on board when we look at how we're going to roll it out more broadly. So with something like, so for example, when I mentioned about that farm sensor project, it's a pilot, so it would be rolled out on 50 farms. So 5 of those 50 farms are that tier one, the very technically adept farmers. They're in tune with everything we're doing. And before we then rolled it out to a broader audience, it was communication, the level of detail, it was sense checked. And I know that sounds quite primitive in the approach, but we have learned that that is the way to do it, because if it's coming from us, Kerry Group, the kind of the big corporate, it doesn't always land as well as it does when it comes from the farming community. And I think that for us as well, we have to, and we do this quite often, if something isn't working, we have to take the feedback quite quickly and pull the pilot. Because if we keep trying and trying, then we lose the respect and the trust of the farmers. So for us, and now I'm very fortunate, this is an Irish context, we have a very close relationship with farmers. That's one example. When it gets into dealing with third-party suppliers, it's not as straightforward. But for us, it's farmers speaking to farmers is how we achieve.
Maybe what can I add to Sibyl's example is that usually when farmers are, let's say, very open to data, usually that the profile is also very open to profit. So these farmers are usually expecting a good ROI from any pilot and experience, and that's fair. I mean, but you have to take that into consideration. Farmers usually are not, let's say, scientists, or they're not into research, but more into optimization, efficiency. So they're open, but their expectation is quite high.
That's very true and fair.
And then in terms of Tastewise, so our platform really helps our customers understand consumer behavior trends, as well as both in the short term and in the long term. So in terms of implementation, when we're talking about farmers as a customer of ours, we do work with some cooperatives in Latin America that, as Jean-Marc already mentioned, they're farmers, and there's an institution that is already very much keen on using the data, and they're very much forward thinkers. There's not that much friction in terms of the implementation of our solution, and it's rather a training for them to make the most out of all of the data that we're putting for them and for them to utilize. So I think it's perhaps a little bit less relevant for Tastewise than for my colleagues. Having said that, I think I do very much want to emphasize the fact that the farmers that we're already working with, or the cooperatives that we're working with, have already the right mindset to implement these types of technologies already in their day-to-day operations.
No more questions?
Is there any further question? Yes, please, Elvira.
Hello. Not sure if my question is a fair one, but all these wonderful tools you use, I understand it's about waste reduction, lower carbonizing, avoiding failure of introducing new products to the market. Would you use them also to shift formulations of existing products? And here I'm thinking about shifting to a plant-based ingredients or commodities, because I just learned on the other side of the hall that consumers are mostly willing to follow these rules with hybrid products. So gradually you're changing one ingredient, one sourcing from the other, and going further to a better sustainability. Is it a fair question here?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I suppose I could have spent the time talking about the reformulation side of Kerry's business as well. So thank you for the question, because I suppose I'm focusing on on-farm intervention, and that's really what I've focused here on around regenerative agriculture. The other side of Kerry's business and our capability is around this idea of reformulation. So if we are looking at a product, there's two ways you can decarbonize or make the product more sustainable from a nutrition perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. You can look at the raw material and on-farm intervention, which has been discussed, but you can also look at the reformulation. And a good example, so I'll use the dairy example because that's consistent to what I've been speaking to. If you're looking at a product that has 100% dairy ingredients in it, and if you can take out 30% of the dairy, you're reducing the carbon footprint automatically without doing anything with the on-farm. So if then you partner it with a low carbon dairy source of the 70% remaining and the reformulation, you're then looking at a much more sustainable product from an environmental perspective. The other piece, and I'm sure you heard that mentioned as well, is it's not just about the environmental piece, it has to be about the nutritional optimization as well. So you have to make sure that if you're taking dairy out of a product, that you're maintaining the nutrition. So you're not filling it with something that is poor nutrition or that is harmful for the environment on another space. So I suppose it's looking at the trade-off piece, but it's very much looking at the two components in tandem. And I think the other piece, which is very relevant in current society, is the cost optimization as well. So if you look at historically, reformulation sometimes maybe had a negative view because it was about taking out high nutrition products and putting in lower quality, lower cost replacements. So we don't want to go down the reformulation route that we're going to put in fillers or products that are not going to be benefiting the consumer. So it's a balance, but I suppose with everything from a sustainability conversation, it's about understanding the trade-offs, understanding the risks, and then making a decision accordingly, but very much two sides of the same coin.
We don't have much time left.
Wouldn't that be a very nice subject for the next bite?
I tend to agree. I mean, and just to build on the previous response, one of the reasons why it's so important to keep in mind reformulation, that we've seen actually some events, some extraordinary events happening over the last 5 years. Think of COVID-19, think of the war in Ukraine, where that ultimately caused a shortage in certain products. The absolute necessity to have the capacity to reformulate without having an impact on the nutritional value of the product, on the carbon footprint of the product, is something that we very much focus on, and we try to map out not only the ingredients, but also, as I mentioned, right, the carbon footprint generated from the from growing said ingredient, or which may be a good replacement that doesn't have an impact on the nutritional value of said ingredient, simply because the price has now become has suffered a huge increase, and that it's no longer viable for you to introduce it into your formulations, right? So to answer your question in short, yes, it's absolutely something that we do work on, and again, it's something that we need to keep in mind more in the cases of extraordinary events, simply because it's something that, for instance, with AI, we can never predict extraordinary events. It's a predictive model based on historical trends. But we do need to have the capacity to have that plan B, that backup plan, so that it doesn't have an impact on our customers that ultimately sell to the consumers. So yeah.
No, just to add, and I fully agree. Expect in the coming years retailers that are also committed on the low carbon journey and on SBTi targets. So very ambitious targets to play a huge role in the definition, in the reformulation, or even delisting a whole full of range of products just to meet the target. So they will encourage suppliers to reduce their agriculture footprint. Okay, that's existing formulas, let's say, to make it short. Reformulate some ranges or even delete some ranges. I have an example on biscuits. We are working with the retailers on low carbon agriculture sourcing, but also he's now telling his suppliers that by 2026, some of the ranges will be out, and especially regarding chocolate, for example, which has also a huge impact. We talked a lot about local sourcing, local agriculture, but cocoa has a huge impact and a very high price now. So there is another reason for that, to skipping some of the ranges tomorrow. So the distribution will play a role, not only upstream but downstream on the supply chain.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I would like to thank again the panelists for their fantastic insights, and also to all of you for staying here also on the second day in the afternoon. And I hope, well, as you can see, the main message for me is that true sustainability really requires collaboration between the wholesale segments, and also commitment to innovation, so we can improve our environmental impact also in the industry. So thank you again. I hope it has been as insightful session as it was for me, and we're handing over to the next session, which I think is also around AI, so it fits nicely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sibel, Eduardo, and Jan-Marc, and Lara, for this fantastic conversation that has kindly led us into the next topic of the afternoon, which is a topic that is on the mouth of everyone nowadays. And this is artificial intelligence, of course. But in this case, artificial intelligence applied to personalized nutrition. It has an incredible power. It is a booming industry which was valued nearby to 4 billion on 2019. It is predicted to be 70 billion in 2027. So it's growing incredibly, and we need to leverage this power in personalized nutrition. To do that, we have a fantastic roundtable again, and it will be presented and moderated by our Senior Program Manager, Mercedes Groba, in Innovation. Mercedes, welcome to the stage, and she will be introducing the next panelist. Thank you. Yeah.
You hear me well? Thank you so much. And well, as you know, we have a small delay, so we need to be quick. But we are going to be sharp with the session. So we are going to start with a 5 minutes success story, and then we go into the discussion. For the story, for the case, I will invite, go to the stage, Mike Collier from McLaren, and he will be here presenting 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Everyone got that? Good. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a nice time in Rome. I'm Mike Collier. Apologies about the voice. It seems to be fading on me. Hopefully it'll hang in there. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at McLaren Racing. And what that really means is I look after a number of our technology partners, so the likes of Dell, Google and Cisco. And what we do is we try and work with them to help them make better use of their data, even though they are fundamentally data companies, better use of the data, quicker decision making on that data, very much with the ethos around from speed related to Formula One. One of those companies I'm going to talk a little bit about today, and their work in personalised nutrition and AI, is a slightly lesser known company, but a company equally important, and that's Salus Optima, the logo in the middle there. Salus themselves, they are a UK-based business-to-business company. McLaren started working with them in 2018, and at that point what we were trying to do was integrate aspects of McLaren's know-how around data analytics, simulation modelling into their technology stack. If I fast forward 6 years, McLaren is now a minority shareholder in that company, which is why I'm here today. They effectively work across 4 main industries, but the ones that are relevant for the audience today are in consumer packaged goods and consumer health. So they effectively work with brands that make food, beverage, vitamins, minerals and supplements. And what they do is effectively they develop digital companions that support the benefits that those physical products proclaim to make. So whether it's a product around weight loss, whether it's a product for perimenopause, menopause, gut health, healthy aging, you can see a list of the companies with which they work on the left-hand side. And the whole point of that really is to be able to do 3 things. Firstly, we're not a product company in terms of foods or vitamins and mineral supplements. We're a digital company, so effectively what we're trying to do is deliver a personalised experience without having to change the physical product, because by the very nature of the definition of personalised nutrition, it's either product or service that helps individuals achieve their own health and wellness goal, and so we're delivering the service element to it. The second thing is that it helps the brand sell more product. We know fundamentally that if you put a product with a digital solution next to it, it will sell more than just the physical product alone. And then the final thing is that we're helping those brands get closer to their consumer, acquire first-party data for them to then better serve the consumer. So those are the benefits. Here's a little view of the sort of ecosystem with which Salus work in. So we'll take information from wearables, continuous glucose monitors, epigenetic tests. We align it with best-in-class science, and then we push out recommendations off the back of it. They have just become a partner, a delivery partner for EIT food, and so in theory this technology is available to the community. They are part of the Healthy Aging think tank, and in 2023 they did receive some investment for the EIT to deliver a personalised nutrition solution with Compass Group, which is the world's largest food service provider. And I think there's a board over there that tells a little bit more about that actual work there. So 1.5 minutes left, wow. In terms of what is it that Salus are doing in terms of AI, okay, I'm going to split it into 3 things. I'm going to clearly keep it really short. The very first thing is we're using it to be able to help acquire data on the consumer. They hate filling in food logs. They hate filling in questionnaires. They'll do it for about a week at best, and then they'll just disregard it. So if you're going to give a personalized solution based on that data and you're not getting it, then arguably what are you actually giving that consumer that is personalized? So we're using AI in a variety of different ways. So effectively, we can use AI to effectively have text-based chat, like a chat dialogue with the consumer. You can talk to the AI and it will effectively log that information, and you can take pictures of food and it will give a summary of what was in that meal, and then effectively you then approve it or change it. And so what we'll do is we'll then take that information, we'll align it then to a series of recommendations or habits and gamification, and that process then helps us to acquire the data in a more engaging, more consumer-friendly way. The second thing, and really, really important, and we spent a huge amount of time on this, is fundamentally helping to structure that data. So cleanse it, structure it, manage it, and store it, so that effectively and that process is being done by our multiple AI agents. So I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we've putting files into folders, and if we put it into the right folder, if you don't structure the data overly well, you're never going to be able to give a consumer information that's relevant to them. So we can take in information related to any of the things around the left-hand side there and many more. Effectively, where there's an API or an access to the data, we can pull that in, and we then use that to then do the next bit, which is effectively driving engagement and insight for the consumer. So we develop personalized programs that align to specific use cases. They're dynamic, they're evidence-based, we work with academia, so everything that we do is valid, it's safe, it's effective. We use habit formation and nudge theory to drive healthy habit formation, because if you're going to try and change an individual's trajectory towards health, then you need to be able to make sustained differences. So effectively the AI is being used to align behavioral change with the data, with the program, to keep it engaging. We're using insights from academia to be able to push back information such as, why did you have a good night's sleep? Why did you have a bad night's sleep? Was that a good meal based on your glucose monitor? What about the level of exercise you're doing? Could you be doing that, doing slightly more? And then the final thing, we're going to see more and more of this going forward, is how AI is being used as an interface to be able to chat to effectively the consumer. So asking questions on their data, getting responses that are accurate and true back to them without necessarily having to have human in the loop. We do effectively have about 80% of our questions being answered by the AI. Anything that we're not comfortable with, it gets flagged and then actually gets addressed by a human in the loop. So we always have that fallback in the event of a more complex question. My final slide effectively is, what have we learnt? We've done a fairly recent deployment of this. We've seen really, really high engagement of these digital solutions with the consumer. Normally about 90–95% dropout within about the first week. We're seeing about 60% ongoing engagement over a rolling 30-day period, over a 3-month period. That was the length of time of this deployment. Super high satisfaction levels. We have seen improvements in health metrics. This one in particular relates to glucose variability, because we had glucose monitoring taking place. And from a business standpoint, we can see that it increases sales, and actually we can drive an increase in consumption in product. And that then pays for fundamentally the licenses that we charge. Additional things just to consideration, data is king, but that data needs to be really good. It needs to be structured, it needs to be organized, it needs to be consented to be able to be used. The end user experience is super critical. If they don't like it, they won't use it. And so actually we spend a huge amount of time doing consumer research to understand actually, what if we put this figure here? What if we do that there? What does that make a difference to the experience? Companies themselves, when you talk about AI, they freak out, generally speaking. They have huge reservations about it. So actually, to be able to work with these large organizations, you need an enterprise-grade capability which we have developed to give them confidence that the data will remain safe and secure. And then the final thing, which will cause a barrier, is that the technology is evolving super quick. People don't know really where to start, if I'm perfectly honest. And actually, that sales cycle for anyone that's interested in doing a B2B is quite lengthy, so do be prepared. That concludes my slightly over 5 minutes, but I did my best. Don't hate me.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this fascinating case, and also over there, please. And also, all the achievements that you have achieved so far are really, truly inspiring. But there is another side to the coin, and there is always still some challenges, some barriers beneath these cases, as you may know. And also, this is exactly what we are going to do today. We are going to go deep into this discussion with our amazing panel that we have here today to discuss not just opportunities, but also challenges when we come to the unlocking the transformative power of AI into personalized nutrition. Please welcome, join me to welcome the panel. So Rick Snaitzer from Siemens, I'll do my best with my pronunciation. Tony Hunter from Future of Food Consulting, and Mariette Abrams from Kina. Big applause, please. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start from where it all begins. data. As you know, data is the tool we use to understand the universe. Humans are data, and in fact, today we are producing data right now. However, if we don't effectively managing this data, we don't go anywhere. So this is clear. So let's start with you, Rick. So you come from a leading software company that you help companies to process data. So you might agree with me that we are swimming in an ocean of data, and this is only going to increase. We are producing data everywhere. So the question is, what we are going to do to avoid drowning in this data, how we are going to manage the data now and in the future.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Rick, indeed. A pleasure to be here. So I'm working for Siemens, a big industrial automation company, and what we actually doing in personalized nutrition, or what in general what we can do with personalized nutrition. I think there are two elements, of course. You have the consumer, and then you have the B2B. And I think it was super interesting also to see that all these huge, large companies are already looking into, okay, what can you do with personalized nutrition? So it's starting, of course, with the consumer, with the person that shares the data via a watch or like different other points of data, and then you're going to collect the data. But do you really want to have all the data? So I was quite pleased to see that structuring the data is one of the most crucial points, right? Because having a lot of data in general, it's nice, but which qualitative data you really get, that is the most important relevant point. So if you look a little bit more to Siemens, what we're actually doing in the industrial side is that you are actually managing, monitoring a lot of data already on the physic machine or on the human. So basically you're making already decision on the device itself. So you don't want to have all your data in the cloud, but you, for example, are making already decisions locally. So can be on a body, but it can also be in a production process. So by having this already data analysis, you can, for example, also say, I only want to have certain measurement points that, for example, are not good. Then you don't need to share all the data, but then you have only certain data points that are being shared. And if you have this data, then it's being already more structured, more optimized already upfront. So it's basically creating an infrastructure, what kind of data points, what was quite interesting to see indeed, to mapping and what you really need. And that is, that's just learning by doing, I would say.
Thank you. So, okay, that was great. But once we have managed the data, for example, Tony, who owns the data? Who controls access to the data?
I think that's really the big question, the elephant in the room, Mercedes. I think theoretically, the consumers should own their own data. And we have certainly seen over the last couple of years since the release of ChatGPT and all the problems around suing and counter-suing for data scraping for the internet, that data really is a new oil. I've been saying that for years, but now even more than ever, having the correct data is the key to generative AI in getting the right answers that you need. And I think that what consumers should be looking at is, hey, I'm producing the data. What am I getting for my data? Is it access to an app? Is it access to things to improve my health? What am I getting out of it? What's the value of the data? And I think that from my perspective, that's something that hasn't yet been decided upon. And that's something that consumers really need to think carefully about as we get into this age of generative AI and personalization. It is personalized data. It belongs to the individual. What they choose to do with that, I think, needs to be carefully thought out.
Yes, and this moves very well to our next question. So let's go a little bit deeper. And should we be worried how exposed we are? What do you think, Tony? So what do you think the AI companies should be doing to safeguard the sensitive and personalized nutrition, information?
Yeah, I think as Mike was saying, data leakage, and we've seen so many breaches of databases, ongoing this year. And I think that protection of data is really, really, really important. So where should that protection lie? I mean, at the moment, it lies with the companies. Is there a future where we actually have our own data as part of our smart devices or whatever, and that we protect our own data, or what do we do? Again, it's one of those other questions I think that everybody, every company is wrestling with. How do you protect that data? How do you ensure its integrity?
Thank you. And now let's move on to the nutrition part. And let's start with you, Mariette. You are a nutrition expert, and you know very well, you're better than anyone, that analyzing that data is just half of the battle. So do you think that the technologies can really understand the individual needs, and especially how unique we are all, so different gut health, different microbiome, body needs? Do you think we can trust in a technology with that?
So I would say for now the short answer is probably no, because as we think about the science, and what we've learned here as well, is that the science is really emerging, but personalized nutrition in itself is not new. As nutrition experts, we've been providing personalized nutrition for a very long time already. But I think when we think about the technology angle, we need to think trust is a big issue for consumers, of course, because can consumers trust which technology it's using to actually provide that recommendation? So can they trust the advice that is given to them? Secondly, we need to think about, actually, can we trust the scientific papers or the databases that advice is actually based on? Because we know that when it comes to genetics, for example, when it comes to microbiome, when it comes to wearable data, this is all from people who can actually afford these kind of solutions, who can actually use a CGM or use an Apple Watch or do a genetic test or a microbiome test. So the data that we have at the moment is practically quite biased, and it really speaks more to a population group that is already more wealthy and more healthy and can actually afford it. So if we're thinking about a wider database and what the AI is pulling on to provide those recommendations, we should really be questioning and always looking. If we look at exactly, healthcare professionals, they are not trusting the AI because they don't know what the data was based on, first of all. So and the biggest concern of healthcare professionals is the widening inequality that we see the more AI is integrated. So I think these are huge concerns that we need to consider and then we need to address. But of course, technology is the future. And I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an optimist, so I definitely see the future, but I don't think we are asking the right questions enough to make sure that consumers, healthcare professionals, and also the technology companies are asking the right questions so that we don't avoid the ethical consideration of how fast AI is developing and being employed in the industry.
And I think too, the thing we need to look at is, as Mariette said, the advice that's given by the AI is based on the data it's trained on, the scientific papers. Now, one of the things someone pointed out to me a while ago was what they called the temporal nature of truth. In other words, what is true today may not be true tomorrow or a month or 6 months' time. And making sure that your AI is up to date with the latest data and the quality of that data in terms of peer-reviewed papers, things like that, gold standard research, that I think is an ongoing issue, and keeping these AIs up to date so it's providing the latest data, and as you pointed out, Mariette, that's appropriate to your particular situation, is going to be an ongoing issue.
So perhaps the fair questions would be, what is the magic ingredients that AI technology should include to predict the personalized nutrition? Maybe you might explain this case. Do you think there is a magic ingredient to include in this AI technology?
There's been some really cool points actually raised along, which I'm just going to try and cover off. So in terms of remaining up to date on research, we're effectively using a number of technologies to be able to ensure that any new research that comes in is effectively being critiqued and then being implemented into or disregarded in terms of research. So I like to think that our recommendations remain up to date. On the topic of data and data ownership, all of the All of the data that we collect from the consumer is consented, first and foremost. The data itself is anonymized, de-identified, and any information that then gets shared to other parties is aggregated. So effectively, there's no way to be able to link. Should there be a data leak, which effectively we have the insurances from the likes of Microsoft that fundamentally that won't happen. But should it, then there's no way of bringing an association of the data back to the individual as well. So I think that's important. I think that in terms of the question around, what is the magic around AI and personalised nutrition, I think that at this moment in time, it's all trial and error. I think hopefully a lot of trial and less error, if I'm honest. But I think that let's not try to get too hung up on the AI element. I think it's a component of the solution. It's not everything. And I think that the way in which we're using it is to target particular pain points. So I mentioned engagement. I mentioned about reducing burden. I mentioned about being able to provide a consumer an answer to a question that is accurate based on their data, that if you had to wait for a human to respond to, it could be 48 hours, and for which you've already lost the will to live on what the answer to that question might be. So in that respect, it's a productivity tool for coaches. Absolutely, it helps them see more people, and it helps to keep the cost down. And we've spoken about making sure that we have solutions that can go to the many and not the few. And I think that in the way in which we work, the brands pay for the digital solution, not the consumer. So there's a business model element as well in that.
Thank you. Interesting points. Mariette, you mentioned about the role of AI and the nutrition expert, but here we see that AI and technology is evolving so quickly. So the question is, do you think that in the future will AI replacing the human nutrition expert, or will be a space for both, or what is going to be the balance between both of them?
So there is a quote, I didn't create it, but certainly AI will replace some human experts. But the AI will definitely replace human experts who don't use AI. That is for sure. So I think the magic will be where AI can be used in combination with healthcare professionals, because as Mike said, it could be, the AI is much faster at synthesizing data, but the role essentially of the healthcare professional will essentially change from one who's really the knowledge expert to one who actually helps them to change their behavior, which the AI can't do, because you can give as much data and wear as many wearables, but if you're not willing to change your behavior and know how to actually achieve that, that's where the nutrition experts will have an excellent role. But I think we have a huge gap in terms of the knowledge, in terms of technology and healthcare professionals. So there's a lot of education. It doesn't become part of the education system at the moment as nutrition practitioners. So I think in the future, nutrition practitioners not only need to know what AI can do, how it works and how it helps them, but they should also be involved in the product development phase of products, so that they actually can have more trust in the solutions that come onto the marketplace. So yes.
And in fact, Tony, you mentioned yesterday in your talk about about the AI and the potential and the future for the AI and technology. So do you have any thoughts on what Mariette just explained?
A couple of things. I suppose in the longer term, I'm a little bit more bullish than Mike. I see generative AI, rather than the traditional AI we've been using for decades, as being the centerpiece of personalised nutrition. It will be the repository of all the data. It will have a digital twin model of each of us individually, with our individual microbiomes, our individual genetics and everything. And that, for me, is what will drive the long-term personalisation of food. I agree with what Mariette's saying is, that we still need human oversight, particularly at the moment. And as someone said, I didn't make up this quote either, but someone said to me, they said, let's not confuse artificial intelligence with artificial wisdom. They're not the same thing. So at the moment, humans oversight is required. I'm a little bit more bullish in the long term, particularly if we have true digital twins. I mean, one of the ones I talk about, there's one called Harvey and Harvetta, models 80,000 biochemical reactions, 26 organs, 6 blood groups, and the microbiome to look at your reactions and predict your reactions to food. When you start crunching the numbers, those sorts of numbers, and that data points, we could have billions of data points a second coming out of this room in 20 years' time that has to be analysed. And I think that that generative side of things is really going to have a huge effect.
Indeed, thank you so much. So coming back to you, Rick, and to discuss another important element on this, which is accessibility. So today, not everyone can afford to go to a human nutrition expert, so it can be a little bit like you think like it's something like a luxury service. So do you think that AI and technology can be part of the solution to make this personalized nutrition through a technology more affordable, inclusive, and accessible to everyone?
Yeah, well, I think definitely AI is going to disrupt many business models and lives of everybody, right? So I think with personalized nutrition in general, it is a lot is now advising, right? We advise what somebody could eat or should eat. But in the end, if you have AI, of course, the power of AI is that you can analyze really large data sets. So with all the data, you can, of course, create an optimized measure of a certain group. I was really triggered about the group. Well, who is the group? Is the group only the one with an Apple Watch? Because that's maybe not even the group that you want to target. So this is a real interesting point, because if you go one step further, what is actually the next step of personalized nutrition is that you're going to adapt our food. That you make, for example, more food groups, that you have personalized food subgroups. And if you want to create it, you of course want to create it for everyone, not only for a certain group that has wearing an Apple Watch. So, and here comes, of course, the crucial point, is that if you want to create that, you need to have a lot of data points. So I think it definitely will change. It's already changing everybody's lives, right? But AI will make it more affordable, will make it more efficient, but we're definitely not there yet. But it definitely will have a big impact on our whole food supply chain and food system.
I'll just add to that, because I think at this point the USA is doing quite a good job in terms of the food as medicine movement, and the reason why it's so effective is that they've identified, managing chronic disease is a huge issue, and food and lifestyle has a big role to play in that. But what they got together was the regulators. The government has put up 2.5 billion for startups to create solutions. The retailers are on board. The insurers are reinsuring. The regulators are now reimbursing medical nutritional therapy. So it's not just end-stage kidney disease and diabetes. And so they can access nutrition expert, and be reimbursed. Plus, if you are on food assistance, you know where to get your food stamps. The retailers are reimbursing that. They're accepting the vouchers. So you can see that it's accessing a much wider group, but it actually requires everybody to come together. Whereas in Europe, people have to pay out of pocket to see a nutritionist or a dietitian. So there are already barriers there. The more healthier foods, as we know, is more expensive. And so there are so many barriers to just making healthy living a lot easier. So I think if in Europe especially, there could be probably more locally, not thinking completely widely broad, but European-wide. But there needs to be a better coordination to really address the issues of why nutrition is becoming, or lack of good nutrition is becoming such a huge issue, and has these knock-on effects on really preventable chronic diseases. So that's where I think there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, there is a lot of to do, and there is a lot of for governments to take these issues or this matter into discussion. So I want to give to open the floor for questions, because we have only 7 minutes. I have more questions, but I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions to this amazing panel. Please, don't be shy. It's fine. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pawan, and my question is, whenever we talk about personalized nutrition and AI, the main question becomes the data. And when there is lots of solution or the idea, you can wonder, okay, I can create this and I can think this can be a possible solution. But customer and the individual are not willing to share information because this kind of solution require lots of data. How you can convince and how you can collect these kind of information, giving the surety your data will be safe and it will be used in correct way, because they are not willing to share, and that's a big question to create a solution in that case.
Shall I start? So we track the personalized nutrition solutions that are in the industry. And I think one of the key things to do is to ask as little information as you can at the beginning, because people need to build their trust in you. That's the first thing. If we look at the solutions that are available on the market at the moment, it's not at the highest level of personalization. So most people want to know, what do I do if I want to increase my fiber intake? What foods do I need to look for when I go shopping? So about 20% of the AI, machine learning solutions are these smart eating solutions, so that they can get personalized meal plans and recipes based on that. I think if you start there, that can then build the confidence of consumers to then provide higher level of data or more data. But nobody wants to, and that's what we've seen in the studies. Consumers will try you first to see how good are you at personalizing based on my lifestyle, my taste preference, my budget, my beliefs and my values. If you start there, you are safe. But collect as little as possible and build trust, earn trust.
And I think the thing is, it's all about what's in it for me. As the Merit's saying, if you give the someone data and it works and you feel better and you feel healthier, you're prepared to give more data for more benefits. If it's just, give me all your data and I'm sure it'll work and you'll feel okay, you're going to hit those barriers. If you say, give me this data and you get some benefits, then you add more data and you see increasing benefits, then consumers are more willing to part with their data. And we see generationally that the younger the generation, the more comfortable they are giving away absolutely every bit of data on themselves without any problems at all. So, and that just seems to be the way it is. They don't see the value in some ways in privacy unless it affects them, like, fraud or financial fraud or things like that, but giving away a lot of their personal data doesn't seem to mean much.
I'll just add to that. So fully agree, minimise the onboarding. They get bored answering questions. You'll get a huge amount of churn. That they won't get into the solution to see any of the benefit. And I completely agree on actually what's the value, what's the benefit. I think it needs to be quite pointy in terms of what the solution is for the user to get them engaged. There's too many generic solutions out there. And then just in terms of one of the case examples, the Compass Group example, that was deployed with their own staff, okay? It was open to everyone. It was capped to about 150 users, totally voluntary. They knew exactly what the solution would do, the type of information it would collect, and it was oversubscribed within 45 minutes. So it kind of goes against the idea that people don't want to give you data. I think they will. I think it's how you collect it, what's the value add, and I think it's about informing people what you do with that data. And then I think that and if it's pointed towards a particular need state or use case or challenge or goal, then I think that people will be willing to give you the data. The next challenge is, can you deliver a service or a solution that they actually like? That's a completely separate question, but I think that's what we've seen in terms of deployments. And obviously that was in an employer-employee setting as well, so which is often a lot of people go, is it a big brother watching over me? Actually, I think as long as people are clear about how the data will be used, then generally speaking, people actually are okay.
I have a question for all of you, actually. Thank you for sharing the very insightful information for the future. It's like we are living in the future, like Tony yesterday pointed out a couple of times. But concerning the data and information, there are so many possibilities in the future, which I would like to share as well in intensive of this previous information concerning the sports people, for example. You come from the sports for consumables, for example, making a watch on your wrist and how much exercise do you have. It is one kind of a data that will give you a personalized nutrition of the planning of the ingredients that you need to put in your body so you can have a better day or you have a better sports outcomes. So what is the point, or do you work on specific appliances for the home, for the household, to have a personalized input? Is it a watch for sportsmen? Is there a possibility to have that kind of collaboration with the professionals from the personalized nutrition within normal life living?
It's funny actually, because most of 100% of the work that we do actually isn't with sports people. I think everyone thinks McLaren, and they think that it's natural to think that actually we will use and work it on our race drivers and people like that in order to be able to prove some concepts out. The reality is that they're very well looked after. They have a team around them, and the value for them wouldn't be as great as it would be for the likes of you and I, fundamentally. So we develop these solutions in order to be able to be scalable, to be made available to as many people as possible, and to be affordable as a result of that. I think you will naturally see new wearable technologies coming on board that will deliver new data sets for you that you will then potentially use to then deliver a next level of personalization. I think that will just continue to evolve, and sport is often a really good test bed to try these things out because they're quite interested in the outcomes. But from the work that we do, we actually don't get near the sports people because they're really difficult people to work with. They're really ungrateful and they don't like paying for anything, so that's why.
I'll add, I have worked on one solution and it failed. And that was kind of incorporating how much you moved and what you ate, and then it will provide like a personalized drink, and it failed. And I must say, within the industry, nobody's cracked the successful business model yet. So I think we'll get there, but we're not there right now.
And I think to your point about collecting data, it'll be all about the sensors. So AI needs data. Data comes from sensors. The easier it is to wear that sensor and collect that data, the more data you'll get, the easier it will be to do that. So we're seeing things like e-skins now, transparent skins that will fit on the inside of your wrist to take data. You have liquid metal tattoos. We have now sensors that can be incorporated in clothing that can be washed, and the power for them comes from wearing. We've got sensors powered from the sweat on your skin with no power source. And these things are just starting to accelerate ever more. So I think we're going to see in the next 5-10 years enormous amounts of data that's able to be collected from sensors of all sorts.
Maybe a last point to add. I think it's also, maybe you don't want to directly have all the data, right? You can also start with lower data points that you already have certain smaller benefits that's already helping you in a certain direction. I think you don't need to directly have purely 100% a digital twin of your body. Yeah, it's nice, but it's like also directly super far away. So maybe by already collecting some extra data points, people can maybe already increase their lifestyle with maybe 50, 70, 60%. So I think it's also starting from there, having more personalized nutrition, known and being aware already from the eating pattern, and then you can already take a really important steps. I think to really measure yourself with a sports person, of course, that is also maybe not realistic. So I think it's also where to focus on.
Thank you. It has been a really, really interesting discussion, but unfortunately we need to close. So in the plenary session, the closing session is about to start. So final words from me. A huge thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights. You have given us a lot of things to think. We know that AI and personalized nutrition is going really good way, a good journey, let's say that, but we still need to do a lot of things to do in order to make it happen. But thank you to you also, to the audience, for joining us today and for your questions. So thank you, and invite you for the plenary session.
Thank you very much, Mercedes, Mariette, Rick, Michael, and Tony. For me, it's clear that AI is a component of the solution on personalized nutrition. We are closing now the Healthier Life Through Food session, and I invite you, as Mercedes did, to go to the plenary session. I hope these 2 days of sessions on Healthier Lives Through Food have been enriching to you, that has been inspiring, and that you have enjoyed a good experience with us. Thank you very much.